Hello and welcome to Shaka Extra Time. I am Paul Ndiho. Joining me on set is Shaka Sali himself. Hello, Shaka.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
I am hugely terrific, especially when I'm looking at this most gorgeous shot. I don't know how you keep reinventing yourself in terms of style.
My friend, I told you that when you sit around a guy who likes style, sometimes you tend to develop the appetite to become like one.
Really?
Right.
Well, you seem to be on the right track.
So, a warm welcome to you, all our Facebook followers are watching us live. Shaka Extra Time is a show that comes to you every Tuesday, and today we'll be talking about a wide range of issues. I think let's start in Southern Africa. Were you surprised of the election outcome in South Africa?
Yes, I was surprised, to be honest with you, because I actually thought that the ANC ruling party would probably go low in the 50s, especially because when you look at the fact that the economy is hugely stupid in South Africa. When you talk about unemployment, the vast majority of young people have no jobs. They seem to have no hope, as a matter of fact. And then the elephant in the room, the land issue. Nothing has much come out yet. And not to mention about the issue of corruption. The issue of corruption. So I think they are very, very lucky. But of course, you could also say that politically it doesn't look good for them in the future, because this is at least the first time they have actually gone under the magic number, 60%. Doesn't bode well for them. And it looks like the guy that used to be the president of the African National Congress Youth League, Julius Malema, with his economic freedom fighters party, he seems to be doing reasonably well.
Let's talk more about the numbers. Since 1994, ANC has the ruling party has ruled with a significant majority, really. You're looking at, they've always had over 60% of the vote. For the first time in 25 years, they didn't garner that 60% of the vote. What could be the cause of that? When you look at DA, for example, people are expecting the DA, the Democratic Alliance, to at least to garner over 20% of the vote. But I think they just were about average. They managed to get 20. Then you look at the party you just referenced of Julius Malema, the Economic Freedom Fighters Party. They were able to get at least 10.8%. What could be the trend? Why are we seeing these kinds of results?
It is the politics of bread and butter, the kitchen issues, as the Americans would say. Again, because remember, I talked about how, for example, the economy is stupid as we talk in South Africa. The rate of unemployment is very, very, very high. So really, the fact that also they have yet to figure out a solution that addresses the elephant in the room, the land reform, and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing very much that endears them to the vast majority of the South African voter. And especially when you look at the indigenous South Africans. You know, South Africa is largely urbanized.
Correct.
The reason it is largely urbanized is because more than 90% of the arable land is in the hands of the minority white community. And therefore, the indigenous, for example, South African blacks need jobs. Jobs, and jobs are not there.
I mean, you bring up a very good point. A lot of people thought that the party led by Julius Malema, the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, was going to actually garner a lot of votes simply because they were championing the cause of land, unemployment. But the results are very far from the rhetoric that we saw on the campaign trail.
But it really did very, very well. It could have done better, but it did very well. In fact, it is probably the only party that actually did very well when you think about it. Mind you, it also has some problems. There are some members of the EFF who disagree with Julius Malema. So the situation there is not perfect. There is also, of course, another situation in the Democratic, alliance. They have some splits. There is essentially there is the white group of supporters, previously members of the Democratic Alliance, who split and actually came up with their own political party. There is also an individual who was also very, very closely associated with the leadership of the Democratic Alliance, who comes from KwaZulu-Natal areas and what have you. He also split. Now, when you think about Julius Malema, who actually, the last time I checked, I think has even doubled the number of members of parliament.
Correct.
He's done very, very well. He's probably the guy that actually won big. And the NC is not in any danger of losing power in the immediate foreseeable future, because it still has a voting majority in parliament, but certainly not as much as it used to enjoy, because there was a time when it was the party of the Madiba, the party of Nelson Mandela. It used to actually have a magic number that they would not need any other person really from another political party to have their bills transformed into laws. They could do anything they wanted. They in fact could even they had even the mandate. The numbers gave them the mandate, for example, to amend the Constitution. They could have done anything they wanted, but it looks like they are beginning to know that they are basically, after all, politically human.
Let's go to a comment. Let's start with Patricia Cabo. Why do we vote when we can help people in more direct ways? And I think she's referencing the election in South Africa.
Well, Patricia, I honestly don't know why you would ask such a question, because let's face it, there is an understanding that if you live in a democracy like South Africa does, it means that the primary stakeholder is the individual South African voter, for example. It means that that particular individual owes allegiance to the state and therefore has constitutional rights. In fact, someone might even take it further and say has an inalienable right, which almost translates into a birthright. You are part of a group which is in charge of that particular society, and you go to do the exercise of electing individuals so that they can play certain roles and reflect your concerns, reflect your interests. In other words, the president, the chief justice, the cabinet ministers, the ambassadors, and what have you, they are employees of the primary stakeholders, the voters. So that is why you have to go and vote, because it is a society. It is almost like a political cooperation whereby every individual has equal shares in that political cooperation. It is not a family. And therefore, there is no particular individual, like a king, for example. A king presides over a kingdom or a monarchy that renders the people who live in that particular kingdom or monarchy, it renders them subjects, not citizens. And the difference is very simple, Paul, because when you are a subject, you do not actually have constitutional rights. You don't have rights, actually. Because why? Because you owe allegiance to an individual authority. And it is that particular individual authority that actually has almost every power you can think about. He could even decide to ration the oxygen that you breathe. And there isn't much really you can do.
Yeah.
And so he can only grant you privileges because you don't have rights.
That's a very good way to look at it. Let's go to let's go to Amina, who talks about alliances don't work, especially if you are a new kid on the block. How do you respond to that? A lot of people are talking about forging alliances so that they can take out these old leaders who have been around for a long time. But can alliances work in the context of, let's say, the election we just had in South Africa? If Malema had allied with the DA, for example, could they have taken out the ANC?
No, because when you look at the numbers of those two individual parties, for example, if you add the numbers, they still fall short. So there's no way they could possibly have done that. But do alliances work? In some situations, they do. And it also depends, by the way, on what kind of issues you stand for. Because don't forget, Paul, that when it comes to politics, they are neither permanent adversaries or enemies, nor permanent allies or friends. They are merely permanent interests. And when these interests change, the alliances keep shifting. So yes, alliances can work, and in fact, when you look back in history, alliances have worked in so many different countries, or different countries at one time have actually been enemies. Look, for example, at the United States, along with the Western countries and what was then the Soviet Union. They came together during the Second World War to fight against Hitler's fascism, Germany, and Japan.
Right.
But guess what? After the Second World War, you know that the Western Alliance plus Russia or Soviet Union won the war. Germany lost the war. Japan lost the war. But guess what? Germany, which lost the war, and Japan, which also lost the war, is now allied to the West, including the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and their allies. Guess who is on the other side now? What used to be the Soviet Union, which now was replaced by Russia. Russia is their political adversary.
Let's go back to another comment here. Let's go to Abdulaziz Ahmed Barrow. Shaka, do you believe ANC can fight corruption and eliminate unemployment in South Africa at this moment, despite them winning huge?
Oh yeah, I think that it is going to be a very, very big and challenging task. But you have to accept the fact that there is a saying that no one is beyond redemption. So you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. And you have to look also up to the incumbent president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is going to be sworn in, I think, for at least for the first time, he's going to be sworn in for a 5-year term next week. This time around, he became president because he inherited the position and the opportunity from former South African president, a man better known as Mushorozi, Jacob Zuma, who was democratically recalled from...
I like your terminology. Yeah.
Yes, he was recalled. And it is very interesting because when you look at South Africa, he was not the first person to be recalled. He had actually been behind the effort which succeeded in recalling South Africa's #2 president after apartheid, Thabo Mbeki.
So what goes around comes around.
Sometimes comes around.
So could the Ramaphosa face the same situation maybe in the near future?
In theory, yes, but in practice, probably not, because he does have a different kind of reputation.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's go to another comment. Let's go to Mark Rambala Mirama. What is your opinion about bitterness African people are feeling towards leaders, the army, and the wealth, especially in the context of having these long-term leaders who have been in power for a very long time? I can think of the Equatorial Guinea president, Obiang. I can look at Cameroon, Paul Biya, and of course Uganda, Yoweri Museveni. Those three are as we stand now, they're the most long-serving leaders on the continent.
They are the most serving leaders, and as a matter of fact, the man essentially whose name you mentioned first, you are talking about Theodore Nguema Obiang Basongo, the president of Equatorial Guinea. The president of Equatorial Guinea is the longest serving president in the world, not only Africa. This is a man who came to power back in 1979. He overthrew, by the way, his own uncle. And the justification was that his uncle was corrupt, his uncle was a dictator, his uncle was everything, frankly, that any civilized person wouldn't want to be associated with. And here he is. So many years later, 40 years later, he is still in power in Marabo. This man inherits an incredibly rich country. There are basically about 1.2 million people. You're talking about very few people initially. And when you look at the kind of money that they access, you would actually think that the people in Equatorial Guinea would probably be enjoying the highest standard of living in the world. And yet, when you look at the United Nations Human Development Index, they measure basically about how people are living. They look at education, they look at health care, they look about what you eat, where you sleep, how you go about life, and what have you. It is like 138 or something, or 31 out of 188 countries. You would have expected, for example, that education would be a right, not a privilege, for any child born and raised in Equatorial Guinea. Healthcare is a privilege. It should be a right. You know, those types of things.
Yeah, let me just jump in a little quick. I've been to Equatorial Guinea, and just to add on what you're saying, there are cities that build cities. I can think of a city called Sipopo City. Ordinary Equatorial Guineans are not even allowed to go there. This is a city built for foreigners, for expatriates, and if you drive by that place at night, or if you go there, the most expensive hotels in Equatorial Guinea are in that city, but not for the ordinary guys on the street.
Obviously, which makes my point that, for example, if you are an ordinary citizen or resident, probably even better, of Equatorial Guinea, what you should be actually fighting for right now as we talk, or what you should be struggling for, is becoming a citizen of that country. Because by what you have been able to say, and by some of the statistics I have seen which measure the quality of life that people enjoy and stuff like that, obviously Equatorial Guinean residents are not enjoying what a citizen would be expected to enjoy, because a citizen would be having equal shares in the resources of his or her country. In this particular case, they are actually treated even worse than subjects.
Interesting. Let's follow up with another comment from Cindy Samuel. What would you suggest to leaders who have had enough time in power but have not delivered any message of hope? Especially if you're looking at these young people. Pretty much most of Africa is dominated by young people, 35 and below. So you have all these leaders who are double their age or triple their age, who are still running and want to be presidents, and yet you have these young people who have no hope.
And some of them, of course, some of them, they have what some people would characterize as have developed patriotic front. Others call it public opinion because of eating too much nyama choma sometimes, you know, that kind of stuff, and they don't do exercises and you name it. I think that if you are one of those leaders who fit in that category, which of course would be very difficult to describe you as a leader, because to be a leader, you have to be able to lead some people. And you have to be in a situation where you're not very far away from those people that you are supposed to be leading. So in this particular case, maybe it is better to accept the other characterization, which is a ruler. If you are that kind of ruler, what you should probably begin to do sincerely is to figure out how to manage your exit. You should have an exit strategy, because unfortunately, if you do not have an exit strategy, someone else is going actually to figure out a way of managing your exit. And that particular individual or those individuals will actually manage your exit on their own terms. Just like we have seen, for example, in the Republic of Sudan. You saw Field Marshal Omar al-Bashir. He had been in power for more than 30 years.
Correct.
And where is he now? He's probably sitting in places that he never remotely even dreamt to be in. I think when you look at some of the individuals, they have had opportunities. They have contributed some good things, and they have also contributed some bad things. They should probably reach a point where they declare victory, no matter what. Manage the exit in a situation where they can at least be having an opportunity to go and live life beyond State House. I remember the last time I was in Malawi, I had an incredibly good interview that has yet to be, by the way, aired. An interview with former Malawian President Bakiri Mulusi, who lives in Blantyre, in a very beautiful, hilly residence in Malawi's commercial capital. He has a very good message why some of his colleagues really, or even some of those people he found in office who are still there, should actually retire. Because he says there is a life after State House. I have also been with another president of Zambia, Rupia Banda, a Democrat, a man who organized an election, lost that particular election, conceded a defeat with grace, and lives like an officer and a gentleman among his people, very overwhelmingly respected by his people. He said, Shaka, when I was president, there are some very good things that access and you enjoy as president, there are also a lot of other problems. My temperatures, my blood pressure used to be very high. I said, why? He said, because you have to make decisions that affect millions of people.
Yeah.
But since then, I do not have the issues of blood pressure. And he is a very free man who walks the streets of Lusaka, who does what he wants, and he mixes with people, and he is appreciated for having made some contribution to his country in the same way that the founding president of Zambia, you saw him,
Dr. Kenneth Kaunda.
Dr. David Kenneth Kaunda. You remember when he decided to play a piano for us at his house in the suburbs of Lusaka. He is now 75.
No, 95.
95 rather. He's now 95. Thank you very much for catching the slip. And he's beloved by his people. Not only Zambians, by the way, Africans. Because you remember how I told him one of the reasons I liked him, alongside his brother, Julius Kambarage Nyerere, the founding president of Tanzania. They were searching for Kwame Nkrumah, the kid from Crawford, the founding president of Ghana, Colonel Gamara Abdel Nasser of Egypt. It's because these people did not have boundaries or borders in their minds. For them, it was Africa. Their tribe was Africa, their nationality was African, everything was Africa.
Shaka, what are you talking about tomorrow?
Tomorrow we are going to look at the upcoming elections in Malawi, and I think we'll also have an opportunity to pay tribute, though briefly, to a great man who was remarkably generous and remarkably wealth, and also a man who pioneered the independent media in Tanzania, the late Reginald Abraham Mengi. He was popularly known and fondly known as the chairman.
Very briefly, let's go to a quicker comment here, or let's go to Okeke. Should governments teach people what freedom means, or is it up to the people to call for their freedom?
I think that it is mainly and primarily a responsibility of the government, because a government has a constitution. And that constitution provides, among other things, the freedoms that belong to the people. And so I would like to see governments, for example, making sure that teaching people about their rights is part of the educational curriculum. So as a child, you should be able to begin right from kindergarten through primary, middle school, or junior high school, wherever it is applicable, senior secondary school, tertiary institution, or college. You should be learning about your rights so that you grow up with those types of, that type of information. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about security, you talk about securing your nation. It is not only a responsibility of the military, it is a responsibility of every citizen.
Shaka, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for being a great guest. I look forward to hosting you on another edition of Shaka Extra Time next week. Until then, so long from Washington.
Thank you very much. And next time, I will revenge by coming with some very interesting shots, because I like yours.